everyone to Insecurity to Identity, episode 1. We are back on track, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who's not only stayed on this channel over the past, a year, but just everyone who's come back to join me, because this is something that I truly love doing, and I continue to tell my friends that text me and ask how I'm doing, oh gosh, I'm just so busy at work, and that is true, but I come home and I find myself wondering what I should do until bedtime, and I often either just read or I will end up working anyways, so I figure I might as well work doing something that I actually like doing. So anyways, welcome back to Insecurity to Identity, episode 1, post-college edition, which I think will be a lot more fun, interesting, relatable to me and some other people that will hopefully continue to listen after this first one. First of all, hello, I would just like to brag about my setup here. It took me half an hour to figure out not only how to add my song back in without getting copyrighted, which I really hope it doesn't get copyrighted. I don't know what the rules are for the minimum amount of time that you can play an artist's song without getting copyrighted, but I just love Britt Nicole's song, and it played before all of my other podcasts in college, so I just had to see if I could get away with a chunk of it, so we'll see what happens once I publish it. But anyways, I tried using my work computer on Adobe Premiere, which is the software I'm used to using. Way too many steps. I wanted to be able to hear myself talk, be able to record on my microphone, and use that track at the beginning, so I downloaded GarageBand, which is literally the last thing I thought I would be using for a podcast. I thought I'd be able to use the software I'm used to, but I can hear myself, I can record on my microphone, and I'm recording on here. And I'm recording on my phone. Hello. So you'll be able to see me, hear me, all that good stuff. It just depends on what you're down for. But I am very proud of myself. So yes, as a media person, I am screaming internally right now. It did take me long enough to figure it out, though. So, long story short, I'm just glad to be back with you all talking about anything and everything. Excuse my Yuma apartment room. I don't know what my setup is going to look like now in months, however long. For right now, this is going to have to do. So, welcome back again. Today, I would just like to be pretty simple with my outlay. I made notes, I made an outline just like I did in college. We'll go over the things that I wrote down, but for the most part, I just wanted to start it off easy. Not sure how long I'll go. Before, I had to go an hour, but I don't know if my phone has that much storage. So I'm going to try to keep it about 30 minutes. We'll see how that does. See how long I can talk for, because before in college, I got to play music in between. Now I just have to talk. And even though I love doing that, and I could do it forever, I'm eventually going to run out of things to say. So, without further ado, for those of you who are just joining us, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me on my ramble of words about insecurity and turning insecurities into identity that we have in the Lord. So that's basically what this show is about in shortest terms I can think of. It's basically just a radio show that is used to encourage, or a radio show, that was in college, a podcast, which is what we cool people call radio shows that we can't use songs for. So podcast. It is a podcast for people to just listen to be encouraged about their day-to-day lives, be able to hopefully relate it to themselves in some way, some way. I hope by the end of this you're able to say, this applies to me, or this is something that I learned, or this is something that I find interesting. That's my job. So I wrote some notes, and my biggest hope for people through this podcast is to let you know that your identity in Christ is stronger than any insecurity that you are feeling, that you're experiencing now, in the past, and in the future. I know that this podcast was a huge influence to me when I was in college, so much so that I'm doing it now again, just because it's something that I feel is important to push on this generation, this society. I've gone through them myself. I know that pretty much everyone I know has an insecurity that they can name, even if they're not ready to admit it. So it's just a way where people can silently relate, hopefully, to things that people are going through. I am hoping that in the future, I can somehow figure out to get calls going through, doing like over the phone interviews with friends that I have. If you're out there, I might be contacting you because I just feel like I want to make this more of a relatable podcast, meaning I want to talk to people that have gone through different things in their life, past college, are now working in a big boy or big girl job, and are able to talk to the people that want to hear about those things. I know a lot of people ask me questions about my job all the time, and you know, it's really hard to be a Christian in the workforce these days, and so I want to be able to also encourage you post-college, even in college, what to look forward to, what to not look forward to, what we've learned so far in our year that we've graduated. So yeah, get ready for possible phone interviews. I have to try to figure it out on here, but that's one of my hopes. There's also going to be some segments. I'll have to think of them beforehand, but I do have some ideas, mostly along the lines of, you know, like what people can relate to in the Christian faith, maybe play some games along the way, Q&As, if I get that many followers that want to ask me questions, that'd be great. But speaking of question and answer, I will also be hoping to update my Facebook and Instagram page more often, for sure. So you can follow those. My Facebook is Insecurity to Identity, and then my Instagram page, I believe, is the same thing. If not, I will link the Instagram page to my bio or put it on my Facebook page so you can follow that as well. I'm hoping to be able to post Bible reading plans there more often. What I've been learning in my devotionals. I'm reading a really great book right now, so I'm hoping to be able to just point out what I'm learning as I go through the week. If you're interested in seeing that stuff, asking me questions, suggesting things to talk about in the future, I'd love to hear any of those suggestions because, again, I'm only so creative in my own part. So let's get started. So if you remember when I was in college, the first segment that I would always do is called What's Good, or a bit of encouragement. And that's basically just a segment where we go through some positive headlines because myself now, as I can call myself a journalist, straightens bow tie that doesn't exist, I go through so many stories today, and honestly, I understand people when they say, oh, I don't want to listen to the news anymore because it's a bummer. And I understand that, but I do want to tell you that it's not our hope to make you bummed out. Honestly, sometimes that's just how society gets intrigued. We have a saying in news where if it bleeds, it leads. And as sad as that sounds, it's true. Now, that may not be the same for everyone, just like it's not the same for me. Being the 4 o'clock anchor for a small news station in Yuma, I had basically had the show that a lot of moms will come home to turn on the news after picking up their kids, getting ready for dinner, you know, doing whatever they need to do around the house, so they're not going to want to hear about a lot of crime. So I get lucky in the sense that I get to find some positive stories and include them in mine, rather than having the late show have to just go all for the bad news. So, again, long story short, we're going to try to stick some positive headlines today. So I actually did this story a couple weeks ago on my show. And it was in regional headlines because it happened in Chula Vista, and it was a Chick-fil-A employee that performed CPR on a stranger and saved their life. So this was a few weeks ago. It was in September, and I really don't want to butcher his name because I don't think I had to say it on the news. I think the reporter who did the package did, but I believe his name is Toya Nenguk. And he's 22 years old, and he's a manager of a Chick-fil-A in Chula Vista. There's security footage of him going up to this car where he notices a man inside the car is, struggling. And so he thinks that he thought at first that they were having car trouble, but then when he got closer, he realized that the person was having a heart attack. And so they were going into cardiac arrest and they were unconscious. Funny enough, Toya wanted to be a nurse and had taken pre-nursing classes, so he already was familiar, he already knew what to do. So he started doing CPR until first responders could get on scene. And later he learned that his actions had actually been able to save the man's life. So that's pretty incredible as it is. And something that was really cool that he actually got to say in the package that aired on TV, he said, "There wasn't any hesitation on my part. I knew that was the place where God placed me at that moment. That was truly a real big eye-opener to me calling to be in healthcare, because at that moment it was like instinct took over." So not only is it incredible that he got to, proclaim his faith on air, but he also saved a man's life, and he also is now has this confirmation of this is what God has put me on this earth to do, like from a manager at Chick-fil-A to someday being able to, save many more lives. I just thought that was an incredible story just because I don't know what I would do in that situation. I really don't. Not only because I don't remember CPR, for the most part, Adam, my boyfriend, has taught me a few things, he is an EMT, and I learned how to do it in high school. So, like, I don't, I think I know the basics to it, but, I would be freaking out. Like, I have a very, uneasy stomach, so anytime I see blood or, like, I feel anxiety on somebody else, I just crumple into, like, anxiety. So I don't know what I would do in his sense, but when I saw that story, I was just, like, appalled, and I had to post it because it was such an incredible story that this kid got to share. The next one, and you probably all saw this, was about the Amber Geiger trial. Now, Amber is a former police officer that went into a man's home named Botham Jean, and she mistakened it for her apartment when it was actually his. He was sitting on the couch eating ice cream, and she shot him, thinking he was in her apartment, robbing her. And so she killed him, and there was a huge trial. The trial took over the news for a few days. It was in the headlines. And at the sentencing and, one of the trial appearances, the judge for Amber Geiger's case told her, God can forgive you, and has. This, even just her interaction, Botham Jean's brother's interaction, and the judge at the end, just made me have to add it. When I saw this on Christian Broadcasting Network, I had to add it. So this interaction took place after the trial and was intended to help Geiger become a better person. So, the judge had seen what had happened, obviously gone through the whole trial process. I believe she was only sentenced to 10 years, which she could have been sentenced up to life, but only got 10 years. And it caused a big ruckus. I mean, there were a lot of people who were protesting that sentencing, but the judge ended up saying, she asked me if I thought that God could forgive her, and I said, yes, God can forgive you, and has. This is Judge Tammy Kemp. So she also ended up giving Amber a Bible, saying if she wanted to start with the Bible, I didn't want her to go back to the jail and to sink into doubt and self-pity and become bitter, because she still has a lot of life ahead of her following her sentence, and I would hope that she would live it purposefully. So she ended up giving not only, mentioning God to Amber, but she also gave her a Bible before she sent her, away in handcuffs. And you probably saw this moment, but this was when Botham Jean's brother, Brant, took the witness stand and actually, told the judge that he forgave Amber, and he asked the judge if he could give Amber a hug, and the judge said yes. So the video of the embrace pretty much was shared all over the internet, lots of interactions on that, because it showed the true picture of forgiveness. Again, these stories just make me think to myself, could I ever do that? And it just shows such strength and power that the Lord provides when in such a sensitive state and situation, because that is a hard thing to do, to just say, you know what, you're the woman who killed my brother. You know, whether it was determined an accident or not, I'm going to forgive you, and I love you, and I hope that, you know, you're able to continue your life, you know, making yourself better. And so that was just an incredible story as well. He also told Amber that he forgave her and wanted her to give her life to Christ. So again, just a fantastic way that the news is able to be an outlet of people sharing what forgiveness is and what the life of Christ looks like to others, and how that can influence other people as well, because Amber was very emotional at that point. So again, another great story. We'll have a couple more next time. Those were just two that I had in my newscast, which was funny how it ended up that way. I just remembered, I was like, oh yeah, I had those in the news. So, you know, I'm able to more comfortably talk about it because I've already seen packages on it, you know, and several times, so I know what the story is. My next thing I want to talk about, going into our next segment, is this week's Spotlight. Now, this segment, if you don't remember, is a spotlight on a singer, an actor, a well-known Christian person. It could honestly be anyone, just anyone, or it could be a book that we put in the spotlight, a magazine, honestly anything that's just been on my mind of something that is inspiring me as a Christian. So if I make a lot of drives, as you may all know, I live in Yuma, Arizona, and I work here, and I make drives home to California. And so on my weekends, I will drive home on a Friday night, and something that I like listening to is podcasts. And if you don't already listen to them, I definitely suggest you do, especially if you have long drives. So I am going to be talking about a podcast involving Lauren Daigle. Now, I'm going to look it up right now because I don't remember exactly what the podcast, what the main woman's podcast is called. And I don't want to get it wrong. But I was listening to podcasts, and I was on the way home from work or something like that. I was going to California, and I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to, I found it. I'm going to listen to a podcast. So I think I had seen it in my podcast app a while back, and I was like, oh, I should listen to this one, because it had Lauren Daigle, and Lauren Daigle is one of my absolute favorite Christian artists of all time. If you don't know who she is, she's an incredible singer. I definitely recommend you listen to her music. She sounds a lot like Adele, and recently she has been able to be featured in a lot of public radio opportunities, just because her music is very, you know, kind of, I don't want to say on brand, but it's just very similar to a lot of the pop music we hear today, so it can easily be blended in with pop music that exists today. So the podcast is called That Sounds Fun with Annie Downs, and she had Lauren Daigle on, and they were talking about her album. She had come out with a new one at the time of the podcast, and first of all, I just fell in love with her the second she came on. Her voice is so interesting. I always love to hear singers' voices, how they compare to what their talking voice sounds like and what their singing voice sounds like. So different for her. She grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana, where she was surrounded by gospel music, blues, and Cajun. So if you want to get like a kind of a hint at what her genre sounds like, it's kind of like that mix. Growing up, she was always singing around the house as a child, to the point where her mother called the home the music box. So Lauren just loves singing. She grew up singing in her home. She grew up in a Christian household. She even was a contestant on American Idol when she was only 17. It wasn't until she had a serious illness that this was before she tried out. 15. She was 15 and she got a serious illness, kept her out of school for almost 2 years, where she turned to music for comfort and as a possible profession. So that was when she turned to, try out to American Idol. I think she got voted off at some point, and she was going to quit music, but then she was inspired to get back into it. And so during this podcast, she just talked a lot about how she has turned her criticism into power and has not let the criticism from not a non-Christian crowd, but her Christian fans were the ones who have been giving her the most criticism lately. And I'll tell you why in just a second, but she's had to go through a lot of stuff to get to where she is today. And that kind of drew her back. It kind of ruined her. She was off the rails for a while. She was not recording anything, not posting anything. And when she was talking about it, I kind of remembered and I realized how long it had been since I had heard anything about her. The last time I heard something about her was Christmas, like a few years ago, was when her latest song came out, because I downloaded it on iTunes and not on Spotify. So you know how long ago that was when you had to download the song on iTunes. So she had been a guest on Ellen, and she was able to sing her worship song on Ellen DeGeneres. And so this is kind of what started the whole debate. A radio host had asked her, do you feel that homosexuality is a sin? Of course, hence her visit to Ellen DeGeneres' show. And in her response, which is what gave her the pushback that she never thought she would get from Christians, was she said, I can't honestly answer on that. She said, in a sense, I have too many people that I love that they are homosexual. I don't know. I actually had a conversation with someone last night about it. I can't say one way or the other. I'm not God. And that kind of just threw the whole Christian audience for a loop. They were upset at her for not staunchly, turning away from homosexuality. But I honestly feel like this is a lot about how we should be feeling about that issue. I've had several friends in the past, and a lot of people, I feel like, shy away from those opportunities. And I think that she answered in a very smart and mature way. And so when I was hearing that the Christian audience was giving her criticism and not backing her up for that statement, I was kind of shocked. I would assume some of them, would be like, no, you should be turning away from it completely. But when I heard that, I was just, shocked. And I think she was too. I think that was the main reason why she had to go away for a while, because she was receiving so much hate, and that kind of ruined her for a while. And so she talked about her new songs, Rescue and This Girl, which were the two songs that kind of brought her back from that time of her life when it was just really difficult. And she talked a lot about her music video for Rescue, which was basically filmed on an iceberg. And it was just incredible to hear her talking about the power that this music gives her and allows her to give other people through her words, through her music. She was talking about how one of her songs, every time she recorded it, there was thunder, and she felt like that was God talking to her through the music. And it was just incredible how, humbly she talked about her music, and she was singing a little bit on the podcast. So, I was just in love with the whole podcast, because I don't often listen to a lot of artists talk about their lives, just because, they don't, it's sad, but sometimes they don't really seem like everyone else. They kind of seem like they're different from the crowd and they're different from everybody else. But sometimes it's just really cool to listen to how similar they are to you and I, and how much even more sometimes they're blacked out from, the population. And I felt like I could relate to her in that sense, even though it was on a much smaller scale, being in a small town, being kind of in like a public figure, in a public light. It gets hard sometimes, people are out there are just brutal, and it gets on you. It weighs on you after a while, and you have to just teach yourself to not let that get to you, and not let what other people think about you affect who God made you to be. And so again, this was like a huge scream of, I need to include this in my next podcast, because it just screams the idea of Lauren didn't let what other people thought her identity should be on a certain idea affect what her identity was in Christ. And when she was voted off American Idol, I think that was another thing that just made her think, well, I'm really not that good at singing. I wasn't meant to do this. But it turned into a career. It turned into being able to share the gospel with others in a public level. And so, again, just a reason why she's my favorite. And I definitely recommend that you listen to that podcast. I will link it if I can as well below in the description. So make sure to check that out. Wow. I'm so sorry. It's like 8:30 and I normally go to bed at 9:30. So I'm starting to die down. I need to get like a Diet Coke the next time I record this so I can be awake for you guys. Or just do it earlier. Switching gears. I haven't decided what I want to call this segment yet. Right now in my notes it just says segment 3. It's probably just going to be, something random that it'll probably be like a game or an interview, something like that. But for now, I couldn't do either one of those. So I just decided to land on Halloween because it's October. Happy Spooptober. And it's something I heard in church last week too. I go to a church in Yuma. It's very small. We have a lot of small churches here, but the one that I have been going to is the one that I find closest to my home church, just because it's like a little more modern. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Okay. Ooh, it's modern. And it's just I've seemed to like it the past few weeks. But something interesting happened when I was sitting in church. They have a pumpkin patch that they put on every year, where they put on like a Star Wars play for the kids to enjoy, and they have a pumpkin patch, rides, food, lots of good stuff. And the pastors there's a female pastor, and she was talking about how evil Halloween is. And when I hear that, I'm like, Halloween's not evil. Like in my head, I'm thinking Halloween's not evil because I was raised in the Christian church, and I was raised to believe, the only spirit is the Holy Spirit. There's Holy Spirits inside me. There is such thing as the devil who's out to get me. But I didn't dwell on witchcraft or anything like that. And so in my head, I'm like, I just dress up and get candy. Like, how bad can that be? But for some people, for a lot of people that are not Christians, they view it as a pretty, bad holiday. And it's mostly a Western custom, and it has really no direct, reference to the Bible. I was looking today to do some research to see what verses I could find, and of course there's no verse on Halloween. But, I was trying to look up things about evil spirits and witchcraft and things like that, and of course there's a couple verses on it. There are, the biblical principles that directly could relate to the celebration of Halloween and the holiday just in general. But, I've always been curious because when I used to work at Family Christian Bookstore, there was a book that said, like, why my parents don't let me celebrate Halloween. And it was like a book for little kids to read. And so, I don't know. You can have your own opinion. Podcast is my opportunity to share my opinion, I think, personally. As a journalist, I don't want to go too involved in it. But, as a potential possible future, someone who wants to have kids someday, I wouldn't want to make my kids not be able to celebrate Halloween. First of all, because how are they going to explain that to their classmates? I guess give them the book. But second of all, like, I love Halloween as a kid. That was my second favorite holiday because I get to dress up, get to get candy. Those were the two main things we did. We celebrated as a family. We got to go out and do different things and go to our church. And I think that's one of the main key things here that I'm going to be explaining as to why I think Halloween is a great opportunity for, Christians and non-Christians alike. But perhaps the best way to understand how Halloween relates to the Bible is to look at the meaning of Halloween and its history. So I think that, there were some questions like, is the holiday uplifting? Is it pure? Is it lovely, praiseworthy? Because, of course, the verse in Philippians 4:8, which says, whatever things are true, noble, just, pure, lovely, think about those things. And so it's like, is Halloween those things? Not necessarily. I mean, some people may view it in a way where it's not pure. For example, like, I see some of these costumes nowadays for a lot of girls, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I saw a story a couple weeks ago in my newscast of a sexy Mr. Rogers costume. I was like, oh my gosh, that's going way too far. First of all, that was rough, having to read that story. But, things like that where it's like understandable. It's like, okay, that probably isn't the best thing to put on kids or put on, girls or boys to think of the holiday as. So when you get to that, it's like, okay, sure. And on top of that, the Bible does not sanction witchcraft, witches, or sorcery. It makes it clear that those practices are an abomination to the Lord. Sure, yes. So, if you're thinking of doing spells or putting spells on someone on Halloween, maybe that's not the best option for you. And there's the verse in Deuteronomy. It says, when you come into the land which the Lord your God has given you, you shall not learn to follow the abomination of those nations. There shall not be found among you one who practices witchcraft, or a soothsayer, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls upon the dead. For all who do these things are an abomination of the Lord. So, yes, we understand that, there are times on Halloween, there are circumstances that, you could put yourself into that are not the purest of things to celebrate on Halloween. But I think as long as you're not following into the path of celebrating Satan on, this Western culture of a day, there are many opportunities to turn it into a good thing, There's opportunities, if you're old enough, where you're not trick-or-treating anymore, but you're giving candy to kids, there's a good opportunity to buy those tracts. Again, I used to have them at Family Christian. I don't know where you can get them now. I'm sure Amazon has them, where they're little tracts, and they're like little paper pamphlets on Halloween, or, any way of sharing your faith in a simple way for kids, and you just give it to them with a piece of candy. They could read it, their parents could go through it with them, or they could be thrown away. They're not that expensive. So you can hope that, one kid will read that and, learn something from it. And you just know you're doing something good, not just giving them candy. Another one is, like I said, it's an opportunity to dress appropriately and tell people why you refuse to dress up like, I don't even know what to call it. Something inappropriate. I know for me, I literally have dressed up like a Disney princess like 3 years in a row, and I'm gonna dress up like that this year again. Because there's a time for that, and I don't think it's Halloween in my opinion. So it's just a good opportunity to push purity and why you want to dress purely on other people, like at a costume party, things like that. It's also a great opportunity to volunteer at your church. Most likely your church will put on a fall festival. I know that a lot of churches don't like calling it Halloween party either. They'll call it fall festival. So it's a great time to go and show people that are visiting the church, how their church comes together to celebrate something that can, is seen as evil in a holy and happy and joyful way. Our church puts on I don't even know what it's called anymore. I think it's changed names by this point, but, they have games, they have, they're like biblical themed games, and so it just makes it a learning experience for kids, and it puts a positive thought when it comes to Halloween instead of scary or like evil. It lets them look forward to it. It lets them look forward to dressing up, learning about, their faith, learning about the Bible, characters, things like that. So again, those are my 3 points there as to why I think that Halloween is still a good opportunity as a Christian to be able to outreach to people. That is all I have to say about that. And we are coming on to about 30 minutes here, so I think I'm all talked out for now. I'm going to have to get some water, some Diet Coke next time. I'm going to have to not do it at 8:30 at night. I'm sorry, guys. Tell me if anybody yawned. If I made anybody yawn, I'm going to laugh so hard. I always feel bad when people watch my live streams at work, because I'll start yawning. And they'll tell me to wake up, and I really try, but at this point, I can't feel my brain anymore. But first of all, I'd just like to say thank you all for sticking with me. If you listened all the way through, thank you so much. Applause for you, because this really did take me a long time for me to figure it out. Hopefully it'll be easier next time, and hopefully there will be more exciting things to listen to. If this was exciting for you, fantastic. I'm doing my job right. Yay. I'm going to try to look into how I can get these on a SoundCloud or something that's easier to listen on. If Facebook or YouTube is easier or is easy to listen to, let me know. If you make a podcast and you somehow have figured out the magic of where to put it, then let me know, because I'd love to know. But anyways, we're coming to a close. Thank you so much for listening to Insecurity to Identity, episode 1. Next week, I'm hoping that we can be talking a little bit about identity and relationships. I know I already did a podcast about this last in college, but I wanted to go over it again just because I have many new insights, because I am a ever-growing adult. And I'm also reading a new book that I'd love to tell you about. I know last time I talked about 5 love languages and the chase, which I'll be going over a little bit, but I'll also be adding one as well. I'll also be doing, the bit of encouragement is going to be focused around biblical couples again, but it's a different one this time. It's based on the book that I'm reading about. Again, if you would like to follow my Facebook and Instagram page, I will link that below. You'll probably already be on the Facebook page, but I'll put my Instagram and my YouTube channel so you can listen to the podcast there if that's easier for you. And I'll hope to be posting some things. Keep me accountable. If you like anything, if you want to hear or see anything, let me know, and I try my best to do that. Again, the purpose of this show is to encourage you all that you are here to make a difference, and whatever that may be, the Lord has put you here for a reason. You may not think that what you're doing right now is that reason, but He's working through you no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are in your life, no matter how you feel. The Lord is working inside of you and hoping that He can keep drawing you nearer to Him and continue to encourage you that you are made in the wonderful eyes of the Lord, and you are made for a purpose. And no matter how many insecurities you may have, you have identity in the Lord, and I hope that I can continue to push you all towards that idea. And again, please let me know if you'd like to hear anything or see anything done, because I'd love to continue to keep trying to make this better, because I would love to do this someday. So again, thank you all for listening. I appreciate it. Until next week, remember to go with God and know that you are beautiful and special in God's eyes.